Great. Well, hello to all who are here. I'm sure more will trickle in as we get going. But welcome to the community briefing for the improvements to Daisy Field in Olmsted Park. I'm Nellie Ward, and I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the project manager from the Parks Department who will be overseeing the project both throughout design and construction. So I'd like to thank you for your participation tonight, and we understand how busy everybody is, and we really appreciate you setting aside time in your schedule for this. I would like to welcome any elected officials who might be on the call. I don't see any right now, but I'm sure we might have some guest appearances later. If anyone is here and they want to raise their hand and say something, let me know. Next slide, please. Awesome. So before we start the presentation, a few things to go over. Please know that this meeting is being recorded, and that's just so that we can post it on the website after this meeting happens in case there's friends and neighbors who weren't able to be here. We will get this recording along with the meeting minutes and the presentation up on the website after this meeting concludes within a week. So please know that it is being recorded. Michael, if you could drop the website link in the chat at some point, that would be helpful. So during the presentation, you're welcome to keep your video on if you'd like, but we ask the microphone stays muted. During the discussion at the end, we would love it for you to turn on your video and if you feel comfortable, and share any questions or thoughts. Next slide. So we do have some virtual meeting etiquette. We really want everyone to feel comfortable sharing their comments and questions verbally or in the chat at the end of the presentation. But if you don't feel comfortable, you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly. And my email will be dropped in the chat, Michael, if you don't mind, if you'd like to discuss the project further. Next slide. Zoom tips. So our design team will give a presentation followed by a listening and discussion session. So if a question comes up or a comment during the presentation, please hold it in your mind, and we'll address it at the end of the presentation. We do ask that that comments are held closer to the end of the presentation just because they can be a little bit distracting. But if something's really pressing, feel free to drop it in. If you're joining on Zoom on a computer, use the raise hand button and then we'll unmute you. And if anyone is calling from a phone, you hit *9 to raise your hand. And once we call on you, *6 to unmute and mute again. Next slide. So we'll start with an introduction to the project team, and then we'll look at an overview of the project schedule. And then the design team will go through existing conditions, site analysis, proposed improvements. And then we will have a listening and discussion session and talk about the next steps. Next slide. So once again, I'm Nellie Ward, the project manager from the Boston Parks Department. We also have Michael McMillan, who's the community outreach coordinator from the Boston Parks Department. Caroline Peters is also on our coordination team, who's a Jamaica Plain liaison from the Office of Neighborhood Services. And then Shane Luigi, our design consultant and associate with Stantec, and Adam Fearing, our design consultant with Stantec. We have a great team for this project.
And then Nelly, one thing, and then we also have Jordan Frias. He's from Council Rubber's office. He's just joined us.
Thanks. Jordan, did you want to say anything at this time?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Michael and Nellie, for acknowledging me. I'm happy to be here on behalf of Councilor Weber, District 6. Looking forward to tonight's presentation. Thanks so much.
Yay, thanks for being here, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for jumping in. Next slide, please. Adam, are you with me? Technical difficulties. Great. Project overview. So now for an overview of the project timeline, department goals, and city goals before we launch into the site-specific analysis and design. Next slide. Great, project schedule. So this project has been waiting in the wings for quite some time, and we're so excited that it's finally moving again. To provide some background, the project was originally envisioned as a joint effort between BWSC and the Parks Department. However, after extensive discussion and soil investigation, both parties agreed that a formal collaboration may not be an ideal fit for this particular site. So as a result, in the summer of 2025, Parks kicked off the project again, and this time as a standard independent parks project. In September, Parks distributed a pulse check survey many of you participated in, and I also conducted several site walks with stakeholders to gather key preliminary input on priorities and desired park features. Drawing on that feedback, the design team has been since conducting site analysis and developed preliminary design concepts, bringing us to where we are today at this community briefing. At this time, I'll pause talking about the overall project schedule and just discuss the difference between a comprehensive park, a typical park improvements overall community process and a community briefing. So for our typical bigger projects where we're redesigning the whole park, we have a 3 community meeting process, a design analysis, a site analysis meeting, 3 conceptual designs, and then a final design meeting. And the community is involved in all of those. However, in a park project where we have essentially the same program going back in the same place, and we're not going to put something that's completely different than what's been here before. We're not going to put a playground and a splash pad. We're putting a ball field back, and we're putting paths back. So the program is staying exactly the same. We have, in those cases, we do what's called a community briefing, which is really like an info sharing session for the community. But we, of course, accept and include feedback along the way, both from the stakeholder site walks, any additional surveys, and this meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that in case you've been part of other community meeting processes with the Parks Department. So after this community briefing, we'll collect the feedback. The design team will continue to advance the design, incorporate any feedback we heard, and then prepare presentations for various reviewing bodies. And those include the Conservation Commission, Landmarks Commission, Disability Commission, NHESP, BWSC. Sorry about all these acronyms, but basically we have a lot of permitting and a lot of different bodies that will be wanting to review this process because of its location and its historical context. So this process will require extensive coordination and some revisions after this meeting will likely be required. And if to the design, and if after this meeting there are significant changes as a result of the review process, we will keep you in the loop about those changes prior to bidding and construction. So you can see that we have a lot after this meeting that we will be going through, and so we'll be very quiet on your end. The community is not involved in all of the permitting and all of the review processes, but I will absolutely be keeping you posted towards when we get closer to construction, which is not going to happen in 2026 or 2027, most likely. I will definitely keep you posted on that. We have a lot to different processes to go through, and so I'm not super clear on the timeline right now. One thing to point out though on here is that we do have a survey that the design team we will present at the end of the presentation, and we would love to hear your feedback on this meeting, on anything else that's important to you about Daisy Field. And we have 2 weeks that we allowed that survey to get circulated and folks to respond to. So that ends on the 19th. So we'll circle back on that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Great, park design. So for every Boston Park project, there are 4 components that go in: public park design, including community input, such as this meeting tonight. But there's also safety guidelines and regulations, such as ADA, City of Boston priorities, and then the Parks and Recreation has its own goals. So all of these things together create and inform the park design. Next slide, please. So the city of Boston priorities are delivering exceptional services, making sure that communities have a way to communicate with the city and that voices get heard. The green and growing goal is thinking about climate change and green stormwater infrastructure. Family friendly is making spaces accessible and easy for all ages and all walks of life. Closing the racial wealth gap is thinking about the ways in which systemic racism has created inequities across the city and trying to proactively address them. And then healthy and safe, creating spaces that improve public health and are safe. Next slide. Accessible, one back, yep. Thinking about, so accessible and available to all, these are the parks and recreation goals. We're thinking about how all users and which features are best suited for the greatest accessibility for that site. Diverse, balanced, and efficient mix of uses is really about serving as many interests as possible in one space. Meaningful and inclusive design is meetings like this, trying to make sure that we do outreach both by survey and community meetings, and that we're reflecting what people actually need and want in our park spaces. Adaptive and resilient landscapes. So that's designing for future and current challenges with climate change. And then promoting connections is between people, spaces, wildlife. And with that, I believe I will pass it off to Shane. Shane, I cannot hear you if you're speaking.
It's almost like he got completely disconnected. Just don't see him at all, but happy to take that.
Ah, he's in the waiting room.
There we go.
Should be joining in now.
Great. Shane, come back.
I am back. Can you all hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry about that, everybody. Clicked the wrong button and I hung up. Great way to start. Thank you, Nelly. My name is Shane Luigi, an associate here at Stantec in Boston. Tonight, I'm going to be reviewing the history of the site as well as our site analysis. As many of you know, Daisy Field's part of the historic Olmsted Park and Emerald Necklace. It was originally designed by Olmsted as a large meadow surrounded by woods, and today it still maintains most of the design, but with playing fields serving the surrounding communities. Next slide. Daisy Field and the Emerald Necklace are truly historic spaces. Can you go back one slide? We skipped one. There we go. As you can see from this, the following historic maps and design plans. This first one's an example from 1881, which shows Daisy Field as it was originally envisioned, an open field surrounded by woods. Next slide. Throughout the years, it's been maintained as a precious open space, while the neighborhoods around it have grown exponentially. As developments continued on, next slide. In the 50s, we started to see the ball fields start to get located. Their orientations have shifted a little bit throughout the decades to what we see today. Next slide. The park we know today lies between Jamaica Plain and Brookline. Lever Pond is to the north and Ward's Pond to its south, and Jamaica Way also intersects along its entry along Willow Pond Road. Next slide. Now that we did a quick brief history and development of the park, I'm going to get into the site analysis of the existing site to make sure everyone just understands what the existing conditions are. Please note that we've rotated the park's orientation compared to the previous historic slides. about 180 degrees. So now north is pointing to the left and Jamaica Way is to the right. I'm going to review some of the basic existing features, work from the right side to the left side of the slide. On the right side, we've got our open lawn spaces, mostly used for picnicking. There's an existing parking lot, which is to be determined if it's in the scope of this project. There are some desire lines leading from that parking lot to the existing dirt paths that have been formed from vehicles and people passing through. We've got ball field 2, which is primarily used as a little league field. We've got the multi-use field in the middle, which is mostly used for soccer. I think it's U10 and U12 size fields, also used for cricket and ultimate frisbee. And we've also got ball field number 1, which is on the left, which is the mostly used for softball. And that's the field right now that has a lot of erosion of the infield mix because of the way the site is currently graded. And a lot of that infield mix is getting washed outside of the field onto the nearby pathway and into the nearby pond, Leverett Pond. There's also some existing field lighting that's very dated and needs to be replaced. And of course, some existing, basic ball field structures such as, backstops and team areas. Next slide. This is a quick analysis of the existing landscape character. We've got 4 basic types of landscapes here. We've got our passive open space, our athletic use zone, the dirt paths that surround the site, and the woodlands. Most of the site is a mix of all 4. Next slide. This is a diagram just to highlight the current use of the field in terms of athletics. Ball field 2, like I mentioned before, mostly used for Little League. In the center of the field, there's the multi-use space, which is available for U10 and U12, also Frisbee and cricket. No, cricket is in the ball fields. And then there's ball field 1, mostly used as softball. Next slide. This is a diagram to illustrate the nearby habitat and protection zones that will potentially impact some of our design here. All these features are under certain protections. The lower left part of the site falls within a 100-foot wetland buffer zone and a floodplain zone. The far right is within a NHESP estimated habitat of rare wildlife zone. All these trigger the need to submit all the proposed work to different agencies, as Nellie mentioned earlier, such as Boston Conservation Commission, and preparing a MESA filing with NHESP for their review and their determination. This will all be prior to moving forward with any of our final designs. Our teams have a lot of experience working with all these agencies, and we'll continue to coordinate with them to ensure we have full compliance throughout the design and construction process. And now I'm just going to highlight some of the existing features for the athletic fields as they exist today. Ball field 2 has the Little League field that's all infield mix with no grass on the inside. We've got spectator seating that has seen better days. It's rusted and all the pathways around it are just desire lines and eroded. They're not accessible. The team areas are undersized. Benches are small and all the spaces around it are worn out and eroded as well. Similar condition for ball field 1 and its associated team areas and spectator seating. Next slide. These are also some additional amenities throughout the park. As you can see, the field lighting is very, very dated. We even have outdoor restrooms that are right at the main entries that are not screened whatsoever. We have some bike racks that have no access to them. They're outdated. Trash cans that are just steel barrels with bags in them. A utility area that is fenced in, but again, it's right by the main parking lot with no screening, and the spectator seating that is in need of replacement. These next few slides are going to illustrate some research we've done in terms of the use of the fields. This slide here, what we did is we reviewed permit holder reservations and usage times for all of 2024 to make this graphic. It illustrates how many hours each group used each field throughout the year. It indicates that a large portion of time is dedicated to Little League. That's how it's titled, but it's been baseball and softball. With ball softball, Boston Scores soccer, and Ultimate Frisbee coming close behind in terms of total hours used for each of the fields. Some of the other popular uses were cricket, women's softball, and other youth athletics. Next slide. This diagram illustrates that both fields are used quite a bit. Just with the softball field, we're calling it field number 1, is used the most. But the pond's edge and the parking lot are used a few times a year throughout the season. Next slide. This is illustrating the current grading and the water flow that exists on site. Sorry for all the arrows, but this is how we, graphically represent where the water flows throughout the property. You can see on the left side of the screen, we're starting with number 1 that highlights where all the erosion is occurring throughout the site and along this ball field. And you can see with all the directions of these arrows that most of the water is flowing right to this field and towards Leverett Pond. And that's just leading to this big challenge with the erosion of the infield mix, washing out over the pathways and into the pond itself. There are a few other spots. There's the parking lot, which is, again, TBD if it's in the scope of this project, that does see some ponding when there's heavy rains. And there's also some erosion throughout the site, highlighted with number 6 and number 8 from just wear paths. Next slide. And these are images of what I just mentioned, the parking lot seeing some ponding and all the erosion that occurs in that lower ball field with, you can see the infield mix that just creates all these very clear pathways of erosion and just flows of infield mix that goes right through the backstop, through the fencing, over the logs, across the pathway, and into the pond. And it's even eroding the embankment a little bit. Next slide. And now this is just the current circulation throughout the park. We've got our main perimeter path, which is a gravel dirt pathway that connects to the rest of the Emerald Necklace. The asphalt path, which is at the perimeter of the site to the right, that's the Jamaica Way. It's the only asphalt path that's near the property. And the rest of the images down below illustrate how there's been some desire lines created throughout the property based on where people are actually trying to get to, some of which we will be able to improve and make accessible so everyone can get to where they need to be in a safe and accessible way. And now I'm going to hand it over to Adam to get into some of the design.
Thanks, Shane. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam, also a Stantec, one of the design, or we are the design consultant on this project. And I'll just start by quickly saying I am a neighbor of this project. I lived at 7 Kenny Street, which is at the top of the hill in Hyde Square off of Day Street. So this, I went to this park almost daily for almost 10 years. So it's an honor to honestly be part of it. And coming into it, I was like, well, I know what this park needs, but I'm glad that we're speaking with you all to confirm if all of our findings are true and in line with all of your wants and needs. So we recently put out what we called a pulse check survey, which was just kind of asking folks how they feel about the park, asking some basically 2 big questions. The first being, what does the park need? What do you think it needs? Some of the responses were just keeping the full-size soccer, improving the lights, improving the walking paths, ending or eliminating the flow of the dirt into Leverett Pond, formalizing the path along Willow Pond Road, there's a lot of love for the pathways in general and how they are not hardscape, but they're actually what in the industry we call it softscape. So it's like a dirt or a stone path as opposed to asphalt or concrete. That want need for amenities like a drinking fountain, just because there is so many sports happening here, so many activities, a place to fill your water bottle, a place to get a drink. People really want to maintain and enhance the green, what's called a softscape, which is just lawn and planting areas, and maintaining the ball fields and ideally not letting them get into the disrepair that they've gotten to today. And then another question was asked, and it was, what do you enjoy most about the park? A lot of folks really enjoy just the connections, like just to the transit. It's in great location to buses, even the Green Line, the J-Way, and obviously it's directly on the Emerald Necklace. So there's just a lot of ways to get here. And a lot of love for just the fact that it's a natural landscape with trees. There's the pond, there's the pathways, which all these things attract birds and other wildlife. So that's just a general love of the space is its natural character. Obviously with that is the grass, and how that does create a sense of community by allowing all sorts of activities to happen. Despite it being right on the J-Way with the traffic and the cars, it is quite quiet because of the existing trees and how mature they are. So obviously we want to maintain those. The fact that it's just a wide open green space, and again, it was designed by Olmsted as an open meadow with woodland around it, it still maintains that character, despite being two ball fields. Again, having the multiple sports and activities amongst that natural setting. And yeah, the rec fields. I mean, it was kind of a lot of the same things coming up in these surveys. So here's the existing site again. We wanted to bring that up, whether we need to use it for reference later, which will directly lead into the proposed site. I feel like when we started, it was the first thing we want to do is not affect necessarily the aesthetic of the park. We want to maintain it as this open, passive landscape, but we also want to improve it to be accessible and way more functional, and also improve this drainage situation that's happening, whether it be through the erosion into Leverett Pond or the ponding at the parking or the erosion along the paths. I mean, all that stuff kind of comes from just years of it not being improved, but here we are improving it. And here you'll see, I'll just, I guess, speak from right to left. We may, again, this is TBD, whether it's in the scope of improving this parking lot. And if we do, we would pave it, which would, again, formalize it. It would also like make it so it doesn't erode and pond. We would create an underground stormwater system that holds water. This would have 2 new ADA spaces. There'd be bike parking. There'd be a formalized path, and we'll get into the materials, but these paths will be, we're proposing stabilized stone dust, so they're not paved. It's a stone dust, so it's still a natural material, but it is ADA accessible and should hold its form a little bit longer than just dirt. We would relocate the portable restrooms to be near the utility area, and we would try to screen that with some planting. Maintaining this open lawn as it is. The hillside, we may try to mimic what's happening at the Willow Pond Park, where we introduce this new, what we're calling a no-mow or meadow zone, where we reduce the use of fossil fuels through mowing and just introduce pollinator, landscape, and habitat through just leaving the landscape as it is and letting the plants grow as they want. And we'd keep those areas to these 3 zones. There'd be 2 newly renovated fields that'd be regraded with new subsurface drainage systems. And then as we move to the left, getting to ball field, what we were calling ball field 1, there's this new potential green infrastructure system that basically things will be graded to reduce the amount of runoff, but if there is any runoff, this infield mix, the sand would ideally get caught by a green infrastructure system, filtered, the stormwater would be slowed down during a storm event, and then there would be little to no runoff into Lever Pond. And again, just keeping the character as this is mostly mown, but there's areas of the no mow zone, which if you've been across to Willow Pond Park, or the park, it still says park, but the Willow Pond area, they've fenced it off and it's just allowed to grow wild. We may do that here as well. So this is the plan, and it's reference to the existing. We're not doing too much. We're not relocating too much, as Nelly mentioned, but improving. Here we have the pedestrian access circulation diagram, which just shows, most folks are coming from Biner Street and J-Way, and they're walking along Willow Pond Road. We'd love to formalize that path, which that is in the current scope. So it will no longer just be in the industry what we call a cow path, which is just folks going from point A to point B for so long that it just becomes a trampled dirt path. We'd love to formalize that. You'd be able to continue on to Brookline, and you'd be able to continue along the Emerald Necklace. But there will be these new paths, new accessible paths to the field amenities, like the spectator seating in the team areas. So those will be formalized. The materials palette, still keeping in a natural materials palette. Obviously, we have open lawn. There's this stabilized stone dust. When we do the green infrastructure system, we would likely not be using this cast concrete material. Well, we wouldn't be. We would use a granite block or natural reclaimed material, which is seen all along the Emerald Necklace. And yeah, these are just images of some of the materials. So we're not jumping too far away from what's already there or what's already accepted by the Landmarks Commission in Boston. The field and the amenities Shane already touched on a bit, but there will be 2 new ball fields. Both are flexible, can either be Little League or softball. They'll be fully what we call an infield mix, which is the dirt, and so that it can be flexible between softball and Little League. And then there's that flexible field in the center. And that can be either youth soccer, excuse me, or adult soccer, but also sized for, frisbee, and just maintaining its flexibility for just community events and being an open area for dog run or whatever folks want to use it for, picnicking. There'd be new lighting, as we spoke about. There's the potential, and we'll speak about it in the wish list from the community, whether there's a scoreboard. And then the fields are maintaining their same outfield run space, we call it. It's 200 feet, and that's size for softball or youth Little League. There'll be new bike parking, both at the parking lot and down. This sort of replaces its location now. It's down at Field 1. New trash and recycling receptacles, and a drinking fountain right down at field level. So it's not up near the parking lot, but as you enter and go down towards the field. And the restrooms I already mentioned get moved to the utility area. Here's an enlargement plan showing one of the fields. They're both basically the same. So there's new spectator seating and team areas along an accessible path. With the new infield mix, there'll be a new chain link backstop and fencing that is goes over to protect the team areas. And then it can be striped to be either softball or Little League. But again, keeping that same run out space to the outfield, which is about 200 feet, and the bike parking close by. So again, this is just an enlargement of what would be happening at the ball fields. Some of the amenities that Parks puts in these fields is standard bike racks, standard receptacle, trash receptacles. The team benches would be on concrete, which they're not now, which, as you know, have completely eroded. And the foundations of the benches are starting to show. So ideally, would try to hold that and maintain its accessibility through using concrete. We would introduce new bottle filler and drinking fountains, and then updated spectator seating, and then new backstops. And these are, again, all Boston's park standards. They will eventually be vetted through the Landmarks Commission, but we're not necessarily introducing anything majorly new here. And with that, these were part of a wish list that were given to us by the sports teams that use this space. And we are considering them, whether it be shaded dugouts, these storage containers, or a scoreboard, but they need to be vetted through Landmarks Commission. And with this being an Olmsted designed park, there are certain aesthetics and certain materials that are allowed. Whether these are allowed, we'll figure that out, whether we can use them or not. But obviously they do change the aesthetic of the space, and they do add a new structure to the space, which there's also a love for the openness and the passiveness of this space. The sports lights themselves will be new, and there's a lot of new technology that has come out since these were installed originally. And to that point, there's a lot less light pollution that will find its way into the woods and the surrounding neighborhood. So it's a very concentrated beam. So this is just a diagram showing like how we will light ideally just the fields. And then there is the ambient light from the street lights, which are not in our scope, but that does help light the park. And as many folks know, there is no formal lighting along this path, so that will still remain as such. So it still will be dark at night along this path, but it certainly will be lit on the fields. And here's just some examples of that new technology. We're working with Musco lighting, and these are just examples of that extreme cutoff, which I think is pretty impressive on how that the field will be lit, but the surrounding landscape will remain dark or less lit, which is great for habitat and or just the folks that live nearby not seeing the glare. The planting within the space in the park, we're using existing information and research that's been done for many years along the Emerald Necklace and with Boston Parks and DCR, one of which is this Emerald Necklace, the Conservancy's tree inventory conditions and assessment and management plan, as well as the planting plans that have already been developed for projects along the Emerald Necklace that many folks are familiar with. All native species catered to this type of region and promote pollinator habitat and bird habitat. But we haven't fully developed our plant list, but they all fall within the research that's already been done. And just quickly highlighting those zones that I already mentioned, but ideally we are introduce some new no-mow or native understory zones in places that they're just lawn. It's just lawn that's mown right now, which it could be that in the future. But if we're trying to reduce the use of fossil fuels and introduce new pollinator habitats, ideally we can transform some of that space into these no-mow zones, which actually capture more stormwater, which we'll get into in our stormwater diagram. But yeah, these are the areas we'll have still a large amount of mown lawn. And then there's one zone at this new green infrastructure that will probably be a lot more intentional planting, where we're actually planting perennials and shrubs. The no-mow zones are kind of left as is and overseeded with a meadow mix. There's still one area that is another TBD if it's in the scope, and this would be the restoration of the slope that's been washed out beyond the path, which is directly related to Leverett Pond. It's just a lot more work that may need to be done along that, which is part of restoring a washed out flood zone or water body. But we'll see if we can get into that with this project. And just some examples of those landscape types. We have our no-mow zones, which you've probably seen throughout Boston and other places. The more intentional shrub and perennial plantings. Obviously, there's mown lawn, and then native tree plantings. The drainage and green infrastructure, major portion of this project, we're really trying to eliminate the washout that's happening into Leverett Pond. The graphic that Shane showed earlier, essentially all the drainage is going to this zone here and just pouring right over the path and in to the pond. We're attempting to create new high points at the home bases. And this is typically what you'll do with fields and pitch the water towards the outfield. And then there's these underground infiltration trenches that suck the water in. And then again, we're going to try to do that in the center of the field and push water to these zones where there may be a subsurface drainage system that will, which none of that exists now. So even if we introduce these things, there will be a lot less ponding and what we call sheet flow, which is water just flowing over the earth during a storm event freely. And as I spoke, this green infrastructure system ideally is slowing the water in the infield mix from getting into the pond. And if we do the parking lot, there will be a subsurface system that just collects the water in the parking lot. And I know ponding is a huge issue now. It's basically a sheet of ice in the winter. In the summer, it's just a muddy mess. So even if you do park, you're jumping over puddles. We're really hoping to improve that. And this is a quick diagram just showing how that green infrastructure system could work, where the ball field is up top. The main path that's along the Emerald Necklace is here. We'll just try to slow that water as best we can before it reaches the slope down to Leverett Pond. Here's some examples of what it is now versus maybe what it could be someday. And with that, quickly flashing up the plan again, and then passing it back to Parks.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Great presentation. And thanks for all your excellent work. So, and thank you all who have been staking around and listening. And we are so excited to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear anything that we missed, anything that you're excited about. And this QR code that's here is a link to a Google form survey that we would love you to fill out. If you don't get all of your opinions out in this meeting, that's another place that you can please share your thoughts and feedback, and also you can include it and send it to friends and neighbors who weren't here, so that we're able to capture additional feedback. So now we can open it up to raised hands and then questions in the chat. Hey, Kel, can you help us out?
So right now we have Walter.
Okay.
Hi there. Hi, Nellie. Thank you for that was an excellent presentation. Really appreciated the full context of everything. I'm the president of the Reagan Baseball League, so Daisy Field is our primary location where we play baseball in both of those fields. I think you captured, Nellie, a lot of what we had talked about in our earlier discussions. I don't have a lot to say. The only question I would ask the architects is landscape is does infield grass in any one of these fields limit erosion? Is something that you guys considered? I know that may limit that to baseball only versus softball, but I was just wondering if you had considered that.
I would love to speak to that because it was my idea to make one of them infields just softball, or sorry, just Little League, and have it grass, because I think that's a great idea. However, because of the way our kind of layout for fields is in relation to our permit holder use, we were not able to find another site that we could accommodate the softball teams
sense.
that heavily use this site. So balls, softball women's league that uses this field has to use both of the fields at the same time, and we don't have another location where we could relocate them. But I
Makes
think it's a
sense.
great
Makes sense.
idea.
That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for
Totally
the
makes sense.
question.
Yeah. The other piece, I just noticed in my pronouncenames.com. The bleacher locations, they appeared to be, and I wasn't able to pinch out to see, they appeared to be placed on the other side of the path. Maybe that path moves, but that seemed to be pretty far away from the current action. Is that the intent, is to have them on the other side of the path as the existing path where the new path would be?
I can try to speak to that, but I think that the like conceptual layout of where the sports amenities are showing in this site plan is just more of a concept layout and less
Got it.
of a detailed dimensioned spacing. So I think that our design team has work to do in terms of like figuring out actual offsets and the relationship between seating and the field layout. But Stantec, feel free to jump in on that one if you need to. Shane and Adam, are you there?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still very conceptual at this stage. Just wanted to illustrate that we're going to be providing access to all these amenities.
Yeah, great.
Right.
My last comment, it was I might have not listened closely at this point, but from a restrooms, is there any opportunity to build a permanent restroom, men's and women's, versus having those porta potties are some of the things that we plop down there for the season and spend the money for that. But I just was wondering if that was any part of the design opportunity.
Unfortunately, it's definitely not a possibility for this site.
Got it.
But
Okay.
I appreciate the question. Yeah, but the best that we really do for sites that have like need a restroom is to install a concrete pad and provide like a pathway or some kind of circulation to the porta potty so that it can be relocated and moved. And I think especially because of this site's location,
Yes, understood.
it probably does. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. The reason I ask is because I imagine Lars Anderson is a similar, I mean, maybe not quite the Emerald Necklace, but over in that park in Brookline, by the baseball field, and there's a tot lot and all this other stuff. They do have a permanent structure there, but there's a little bit different space, and that's why I was just asking how one decides when or when not to do that. But I get your point. Yeah, I think I think you're hitting. I'd love to see that drainage system. That's amazing. Really critical, and the grading of that. Your arrows are absolutely accurate in terms of the flow. No, I think it's really well done. So thank you for listening to us. And I think we get to another stage, certain priorities, like if we're choosing between, for us, the need for a scoreboard versus something else, would love to be part of that conversation. I would say a scoreboard is probably a lower priority versus some other things. So, but thank you very much for everything you're doing so far.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you for your feedback. And yeah, in when we get into like detailed design of like the sports field, a lot of times I'll reach out to stakeholder groups to just make sure like, hey, is this what you were thinking? And is this the right kind of soccer goal? Or, so we will continue to coordinate and collaborate as we get more detailed.
Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, hi, Mark Fardenberger from 23 Borough Street. Thanks again for the wonderful design. That was a fascinating presentation, and I really appreciated, on behalf of the Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park campaign, that you're focusing on the erosion issues. I think we would look very much forward to trying to find funds to do some of the restoration work right around Leverett Pond and possibly the removal of the sand that has flown into the pond through some kind of dredging. I know that's expensive and permitting is an issue and all of that. My major question is, Nellie, this is a big ticket item from a financial or budgetary perspective, especially to deal with this grading and the erosion, anti-erosion measures. Is there a city budget already for this, given that you have a pretty ambitious timeline to start construction? That'll help community members to know whether we need to really advocate heavily for some future budget that needs to be defined or whether you have funding already. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Great questions and comments. So the budget has already been set aside, the construction budget for this project. And we are, I think the way that the design contract and the construction scope were envisioned was literally just replacing the ball field and doing, improvements to the pathway. And it was established quite some time ago. This project has been waiting in the wings for a while, and so the budget doesn't really match what we need for this project, which is why we keep saying the parking lot is in the scope. Is to be determined if it's in the scope. So what we really want to do is make sure that we're covered the essentials, the fields and the erosion control and the green infrastructure, and prioritize those critical key things that were the reason this project got started to begin with, and then expand from there to include the parking lot if we can. And so we certainly do not have funding set aside currently for restoration planting along Leverett Pond, even though from, as a landscape architect and project manager, I see that and I do hear that and I do think it needs to be addressed. But yes, it is not in the scope of what we have agreed to with the design team and what we set aside as the Parks Department for the rehabilitation of the fields. As terms of like having an ambitious construction schedule, I would say that this project, compared to other park projects that I've been on where we're, going through the briefing and then we are finalizing construction documents like within 6 months and then we are starting construction within a year, I would say this is a much more delayed timeline in terms of we don't even have a start date or like a target date for construction. I think on the project schedule, we said we hope to finalize design documentation, so the construction documents in like spring 2027. So that's a ways away from now. And but yes, in terms of like it's not gonna have if we wanted to do collaboration on expanding the scope to include restoration planning, which I don't have the ability to really like authorize or offer, but it's something I will certainly bring back to my supervisory team as something that, that I heard there was interest in. We would be happy to help collaborate on that as a possibility. And we don't have a solution for it yet on our end. But I think there is some time. It's not like this is happening, next year, next spring. So I hope that kind of answers your question, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy to continue to have conversations with you about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bounce to the chat real briefly. We have Sarah.
Okay. Thank you.
Her question is, are you planning any pedestrian access on either side of Willow Road? And then in parentheses, I realize there are constraints on both sides.
So let's pop back to the site plan so we can show the improvements that we have captured in this. Shane, Adam, did you want to speak to this?
Sure thing. As someone again who uses this a lot, there is points where you reach Willow Pond Road and there is no safe way. Well, you can pass over to the following path, but there is no formalized striped crossing. And that is not in our current scope. I think what we'll do for now is reach the roadway at the same level as the roadway, but it's sort of this limit of work between what's parkland and what's not parkland that I think is still a little gray. And I think, Nelly, whether we can jump the curb, it'd be amazing and safe, but I can't speak to exactly what we would do other than get folks to these places a bit safer and a bit more formalized than they are now.
Yeah, and I do think that in any world, we are hoping to include formalizing some kind of pedestrian path along the desire line that's running along Willow Pond Road, which is what I thought the question was about
Oh, okay.
from
Oh, okay.
Viner and Jamaica Way down to the already established paths, which will
Yeah.
be
Okay.
essentially in the same location but regraded for
Yep.
wheelchair accessibility.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I misheard. And one thing, if we are to do that, we were going to take the parking lot and shift it away from Willow Pond Road a few feet to give some more room to the trees. If I were to jump back to an existing photo, it's a very tight space between parking lot, road, trees, path. So ideally, we're trying to give some more room to the roots in the trees, give your path. But
So yeah, that's the piece that we're not sure if that would be included in the scope, but the pedestrian pathway we do hope to include
right, no matter
no
what. Yeah.
matter what. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have been coordinating with DCR, and DCR is, the owner of Willow Pond Road, and they have jurisdiction over care and custody of like a 25-foot offset into the park. So we are collaborating with Gerald at DCR to confirm that the, site works with the plans that they have.
Thank you. And then we have a two-part question from Karen. Um, is there any information on is there any info about how back the wash out has been?
Karen, did you want to clarify anything since you're here?
I'm sorry. Yes, that's a typo.
Gotcha.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's like a great day. You guys are here. You're talking about improving a park. That's like, let's just like acknowledge that. It's wonderful. I meant to say, I'm sorry, I was late. So if you covered this earlier, you can be like, Karen, I ain't got time for you. And you can send me off and I can look at the video afterwards or whatever. But I just, I'm noticing, the water pollution issues going on with the Charles River and these things. And I'm just wondering, I know that this area has been talked about for years in terms of stormwater management. And I didn't know if we know, because we look at it, that there's washout, or if we also have data that shows that this is causing a really serious problem in the Muddy River right there, or is it just cumulatively, we imagine it's bad? I just kind of wanted to know if you had that, and I'm sorry if you covered it earlier, and I apologize that I was late. That's what I meant to say. Is there any real data about how bad the washout has been? That meant to be bad, not back. And then I also know that Boston Water and Sewer has been identifying this as some place they would like to provide water storage, and storm surge storage, which makes a lot of sense in terms of storm surges. But I also used to work for two parks departments. I'm always worried about park agencies having to take on a whole lot of maintenance they don't have time and the energy to take care of without getting the money from the other agencies. So I was wondering how you are dividing up responsibilities and duties over the maintenance, because I want to make sure that my parks department, that doesn't have all the resources it should, I think, for everything. I just wanted to think a little bit about maintenance obligations and the costs of this work. But I love that we're going to improve these areas, which are much loved and much used for recreation purposes. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate you being here. I will just say that let me start with the second question first. We did talk about these things, but I don't mind talking about them again. the collaboration with Boston Water and Sewer, the potential collaboration, we did, go through several rounds of discussions. We did subsoil, subsurface soil investigations, and after really understanding what BWSC had envisioned for the site and discovering very dense lean clay in the site, it turned out that this was not the best place for them to do infiltration and a collaboration. And so that whole like sort of slog of getting there took a long time. And so back in like last summer, we realized, okay, it's time to just move this project forward. It's not the best site for this. We're gonna continue to, we're gonna handle the stormwater situation ourselves. And this is not a good site for BWSC to do a big subsurface infiltration area. So that's where that is. We don't have any, they will be, of course, a reviewing body like they typically are for any of our park projects, but they're not a collaborator in the subsurface infrastructure or the maintenance of any of that at this time. And then the other question about erosion, and I wish that I had a different answer, but we have not done like a comprehensive water quality analysis for Leverett Pond and the Upper Muddy River that like as part of this project. This project, as I said at the beginning, was actually when I got it, it was just a ball field replacement project. And then I said, oh my gosh, this is, and we said green infrastructure is sort of on the side. But then, after really understanding the site and the relationship to the pond and, how serious this condition is, we have, we're really leaning more deeply into really dialing in drainage and some kind of green infrastructure system that we're going to be able to maintain, or creating some kind of contract or maintenance agreement that is in place, because parks doesn't our own maintenance staff typically can't maintain green infrastructure systems. So we do have contracts for special situations where we really need to, where we it needs more maintenance than what we can handle. And so that will be part of this agreement as well, or part of this project as well. So I think did I answer both your questions well enough?
You did amazing.
Okay, great.
They're great. I have more questions, but because I always have questions, but I can wait till others go and answer their questions. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, that's great.
We have Hugh. He wants to know will the lights be turned off when not in use?
Yes, I can answer that question. So the way that the new Musco lights function is that they're tied to permits. So there's kind of two types of constraints on the lights. There's both the constraint of the seasonality of the field. So they're only functioning through our typical permitting season, which is April through November. And then within that window, they are only able to come on between dusk and I think it's 10:45. And then within that window, they're only on if they have a permit tied to them. So if someone is not using the field, but they haven't gotten a permit, the lights are not programmed to be on. So it's all through Control Link, which is really cool. It's like a, wireless digital system where we can turn the lights on and off with the click of a button. But those are through the permitted system. Yes, I agree. The lights are often on when not in use, and that is because the lights that we have now are from, 50 years ago. So I don't know if we have that slide where we showed the progression of the lights, if it's easy to get to. But basically the lights that we have in our parks are way behind in terms of technology. The lights have come an enormous oh yeah, the existing. I was wondering if you could pull up the slide of the proposed.
Oh, sure thing.
It just shows, I think it's an interesting slide.
There's this one right there.
The next one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the left side where it says
Oh, I
1977,
see. Yep.
those are the lights that are in most of our parks, or our older lights that are in our parks. Those are what's at Daisy. You can see the amount of light shed that goes everywhere, and they're just like bulbs that are staring at you. And then as you progress to the right, so 1989, you can see the technology improving, improving, improving. And then today is all the way to the right. And today is the light that we are installing. So it has a very sharp cutoff. So the lighting is just, it's like a shoe box and it goes straight down. So it's much more, you can see it from the side, but it's much like, it's just like it's an enormous gap in technology that we are leaping to from what's there and what we're proposing. I do not have that information, what the cost per lighting costs are per hour, but the permit holders do not pay for that. Okay, next question.
And then back to the hands raised, we have, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Pragnaya?
It's Pregnia, but yeah. Hi, I'm Pregnia. I'm work with Mark and for the campaign for Jamaica Pond and Olmsted Park. And one of the questions I had is Adam was mentioning the type of pathway that they want to use for the soft structure. And I I might not know, but I know at Jamaica Pond, that pathway, we've seen a lot of erosion over since the time that it was installed. So is it similar? Because I know that the main pathway along the length of Daisy Field is used pretty often by runners. And since we've already seen erosion into Leverett Pond, I'm wondering, is it a similar material that's being used and has that been considered? Because we've already seen what's happened at Jamaica Pond where that substrate or whatever they've used, we've seen it erode, and now that's made the water runoff issue worse over there.
I can speak to that. I guess I need to know what that product is, if it's a stabilized stone dust or if it's just a regular stone dust. The stabilized stone dust helps like create, it's kind of like in between a paving material and just stone fines, because it helps solidify that material and still allow it to be porous and but still be more erosion resistant if that is stabilized stone dust. It's something that we should definitely think about for this site. Asphalt is something that we typically do in all of our parks. However, at this park being a historic park and it being on the Boston side, I would assume that we would want to keep it as stabilized stone dust and like a natural surface material. But when we get into the weeds of design and we have the meetings with the Conservation Commission, they'll help inform that direction. But thank you for that feedback. I don't know if anyone else had anything to say about that.
I think you nailed it. As knowing both of those spaces, I do think the paths along the pond are asphalt with stone dust adjacent to it, and maybe that's what you're referencing is washing out.
Yeah, I'm
And
referencing the pathway along it. So I personally don't
Yeah.
know what each of those things are made of.
Yeah.
I'm learning all of these things, and I
All good, all
appreciated that
good.
in the presentation of your explanation of everything. But it's just something that we've seen over there, and I just wanted to bring it up so that we're just cognizant of it because we've seen that already needs to be replaced or repaired in some way.
Right.
I think I
Yeah.
walked this site with Mark and sorry, is it Troy or Tony Dreyfus? I'm
Tony.
sorry, Tony. I got that. Tony is great. He's wonderful. But across the Willow Pond Road, there's another path that connects in there, which he said was the stabilized stone dust. I think it's organic lock, which is a product that has worked really well. So that was the material that we were considering for this site, assuming that it makes sense for everything once we get into the details.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Joel.
Thank you. Thanks, Nellie and team. I'm Joel Thompson. I'm a resident. My family members run along that path. I've been to a lot of Regal League baseball games at those fields, and I'm head coach of the Youth Ultimate Frisbee program in Boston. And so we're a dozen or more hours a week this fall. For instance, we've had kids from 3rd through 12th grade out there, including tonight. I believe the high schoolers are there right now. We're thrilled and appreciative of the city's investment and your time and effort to renovate the field and deal with some of the drainage issues, which I remember from baseball games, watching them. It's been there for a while. You've probably heard me say this before, Nellie, but for ultimate Frisbee purposes, flexibility of space is awesome. You know, what is hard for us are spaces that get fenced or where walkways get built sort of in between one field and another field, because what happens for us is with different age groups and depending on how many kids and are we hosting another team, ultimate fields tend to be narrower than other field sports, but long. They're pretty long. And at Daisy, like we'll go even beyond the foul lines if we need to, and we'll cram in, you know, 3-4 middle school size fields or 2 high school fields to get done what we need to get done and get everybody running around. So it's nice to see a plan that is making improvements, but isn't making drastic changes to that open space, because that open space is awesome for us. And I know accessibility is always a priority for you and for the city anyway, but I'll just shout it out because we do have, you know, a number of spectators and coaches with mobility impairments. And so sometimes it's like a little bit hold your breath going down that hill from the parking lot to the field. So if we can, you know, make it a little easier on everybody, that's fantastic too. But thanks so much.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, I recognize your name from permit holding lists and from other meetings, but yeah, and I'm really glad that you flagged the different ultimate fields, because I think that when we kind of really finalize, we'll want to like really lay out all the different field combinations that we think we can fit and you know, slightly adjust the locations of the fields if we need to kind of make sure that we're maximizing multiple uses. So thanks for flagging that.
And then we have a question from Jerome. Would the park be open to hosting flag football games and leagues?
Absolutely. Yeah. The fields are permitted by like openly and freely. We don't have certain types of sports that we don't permit to unless there's like a permanent infrastructure that's required. Like we couldn't install like you know, a new basketball hoop or something like permanent, like in the field. But yeah, the way the permitting system works is it's kind of like triage in order of importance of, or order of like accessibility to have local youth is like number 1. And then youth across the city, and then it goes to adult leagues, and then local adult leagues, and adults across the city. So there's kind of like this like hierarchy of prioritizing local youth. But aside from that, my understanding is that we don't like have restrictions on like which types of sports we permit.
And then we have a few comments in the chat. Karen says, so much for less light spillage. Hugh says, sounds like a dark sky concept. Good. And then Karen, if you had any more questions.
Well, yes, you guys are going to have to cut me off. I'm so excited about this. I guess as the president of the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, we want to support the Parks Department and help any way we can to help you do more, because I know you're always stretching every dollar to do what you can do. And a lot of times, like, I love the images, I love seeing the no-mow areas, I love all those things, but I know that sometimes, even though that seems like less maintenance, sometimes it's still hard and complicated. It's like a new kind of thing. I was using some of those specs in some other places. And one thing I wanted to mention is sometimes it's good to have signage to explain to the public. Like, it's not like we are ignoring this area. We haven't forgotten. We have a different maintenance protocol. So I was just going to mention, there might be something you wanted to think about, because sometimes when I would do that in some of the other parks I did, like, people thought we were being negligent when we were actually trying to conserve fossil fuels and resources. And then also, I love that you're really considering stabilized stone dust. Are those kinds of surfaces? It can be, I think, it definitely feels like on the Boston side of the parks, there's more of that. And on the Brookline side, there's more pavement. And I appreciate that on the Boston side. I also know that maintenance resources are strapped. So I would love to know if there's ways that the Conservancy can help in maintaining those things, or helping with best practices. I know DCR did install some stabilized stone dust product, like you're saying, nearby, which actually has been holding up quite well. So I'm excited about that. And I know that there's a lot of folks in my universe that are very interested in stabilized stone dust and get very upset about more asphalt. So, let me know if there's some ways I can help. I don't know if there's additional equipment or additional maintenance resources that could be used that would help make sure that that could happen. Because what's so great is these wonderful investments, but of course the maintenance is hard, especially with the way our city budgets are stretched. And I really appreciate your thoughtfulness about restrooms. I think as the member of a restroom task force, I think restrooms are wonderful, but it is expensive and hard. And especially if you have an area that doesn't have a whole lot of constant vigilance, restrooms can be a challenge from an operational perspective. So I understand why you're identifying this site for a porta potty. I think that's what you're saying, sort of a temporary restroom, but not like a full-time restroom. I'd love to think about if there was some ways, maybe later on we can think about where a restroom should be up and down the necklace. We have a restroom that we provide on the Back Bay Fens, but I'd love to think there was a restroom in every park. But I know it's hard because you want to make sure that they're staffed or there's oversight, because there can be a lot of challenges with restrooms. So the other thing I was going to mention is, if you are seeking other funding to pay for some of these elements, the bottle filler, we have been able to get sponsors to provide donations for bottle fillers and stuff in the past. So if that, no, that's not maybe a huge item, but I'd love to talk to you, Nellie, if there's things that we could sponsor, potentially figure out how much more you might need to do the other things like the parking lot. I mean, these things could get really, really expensive, but there's a lot of environmental value of everything you're talking about right now. So there are donors that might be interested in supporting those things. Would love to have the opportunity to talk about that. I want to commend you on really trying to, really using some of the new lighting technologies. And I have a lighting grant right now that I am trying to figure out the best ways to use in different places. And I'm wondering if maybe you and we could partner on thinking about the pathway, like, that you haven't lit, or because solar technology has like just come so far, like lighting has just changed in terms of the cost, et cetera. So I wonder if there's some ways we could see if, we could provide some pedestrian lighting potentially, if it makes sense, if the community would like it, in a very targeted way, even as a pilot. I'm glad you're working with DCR. It is challenging with all the different jurisdictions. I can potentially help with that too. And if there's any street work improvements that we might be able to help coordinate or assist with. This explains why Gerald called me a little while ago and was asking me about the property lines in some areas in our GIS database. It's all coming together. And I just want to commend you. It sounds like even though Boston Water and Sewer are not kind of an active participant in this, you are still, really trying to use some of the best practices and the protocols in terms of environmental sustainability. And I know that it is challenging. So I want to make sure, like, I think some folks mentioned that sometimes there are these capital investments and it is challenging to maintain them. So if there's some way I could help with we could help with some maintenance pieces of it. Maybe we can get ahead of it and sort of plan for what pieces we could all work together to assist either in day-to-day maintenance, or if there's additional equipment that's needed, et cetera, because I think it's tremendous to make this new investment in these obviously very beloved fields. And I just want to reiterate that I really appreciate the flexibility that you're building into the field so that they can be used over time by different sports, you know, to whatever extent doesn't completely wear them out. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, those are so many great points and thoughts, and I appreciate all of it. I would love to follow up with you about lights and you know, I can give you more backstory on like solar lights in parks one-on-one for sure. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. And then as far as like opportunities to collaborate on either maintenance or maintenance or like upkeep, let's definitely chat about that too. And I will try to get clarification from my end on what opportunities there might be. I know we have done, MOUs with friends groups and nonprofit groups that feel really passionately about certain things that we're not able to maintain. And so they often get cut from the project. But in those cases, we can keep them and it's worked really well. So I think there might be an opportunity here for that, and that would be really cool. And one thing we didn't talk about in this presentation, though, it is something that Stantec and Parks have discussed, is signage. So we do hope to include like green infrastructure signage, at least explaining the rain garden system and the subsurface stormwater system. As far as the no mow, that's really kind of like more of like an idea at this point, and Parks doesn't really like to do no mows, but we are thinking about doing an exception because of the condition with the slope and all the water coming down to the field. But it's possible that the design of the drainage and regrading and all of that will take the place of the need for that. But of course, I agree that unmaintained no mow can just look like a neglected area, and we don't want that. So that's a great point. That one's a little bit more.
I'm not saying that it would. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. But also, we there on the other side of the street. There's a meadow we've been kind of protecting with some fencing, and it's grown up, and we have signage about it. But always worry that people are going to not like understand what's happening and think we're doing the wrong thing. So I appreciate that.
Totally get that. Yeah, we have that same concern. But let's follow up in another email chain and in a separate email chain and find
Yes.
some time.
The other thing, just believe it or not, I had something else that I think we planted some new trees in that area, and I just want to make sure that I didn't know if you guys had like noticed that. Just want to make sure if they maybe need to be relocated, it can be done safely, but maybe they don't. I think we planted some new trees around there for the couple Arbor Days back.
Yes, I believe those trees are just what we're kind of looking at that are like page north of the parking lot. Those I believe are the ENC trees. And of course, any trees that look recently planted and invested in, we're trying to protect and preserve in place. And we don't have any.
I hope they're not a problem now. Oh,
No,
geez.
I don't think they're a problem at all.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you.
And we can confirm, maybe, if we need to, you and I can go for a site walk and, look at anything that you are concerned about.
Well, thank you very much.
And then we have back to the chat. We have a question from Rahil. Are there any resources on how to reserve the field and to know what events are already scheduled for the field?
Yes, absolutely. I can send you, if you could shoot me an email, I can send you the like instructions for permitting online, if that works for you, rather than trying to describe it here. And I'll put, maybe you could drop my email in there, Michael, if you have a second.
No problem.
Oh yeah, here it is. Perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
We have a question from Sophia. Can we get a dog water fountain added to the bottom?
That's a great question. I will bounce that off my supervisory team. We have a funny situation where we don't like to put dog water fountains near athletic fields because there's a Parks Commission policy that dogs are not allowed on athletic fields. And so sometimes when we have a bottle filler station that has a fountain attached to it, it gives like a mixed message. And so we don't tend to do those, but because this is like a big network of pathways, that it is not just about the fields, it may be a situation where we would make an exception. So it's something I will certainly look into on my end.
Then we have Sarah. She wants to know, are there any tree impacts, new plantings, removal?
I don't know if we've identified any trees that need to be removed. I think we are protecting all trees in place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shane.
Correct.
Great.
I
Thank
do,
you so much.
and I do know as part of that Emerald Necklace Conservancy's assessment, there may be some trees, very old, mature trees that are slated to be looked at, or just as a safety
Yeah.
measure. And just
Yeah.
making sure that this tree isn't going to fall someday within near future. So that may get included in the limit of work, but we never want to take out an existing tree. And yeah, we're only improving and bringing more trees in. But
Right.
we're
And we
going to
might do
cross-reference with that research and make sure that, this 300-year-old tree is not, going to fall. But I think that's a whole other process of making sure that everyone knows.
Right.
If that tree were to need to come down. But as of
Yeah,
now,
if we have a removal like of a species or like of a sort of like specimen tree that needs to come out for structural reasons, we have been putting like notifications on the trees that they're going to be removed, and an explanation as to what the category for removal is. But I don't know of any trees off the top of my head that fall into that for this project, but we will certainly be looking back at them. We do like to do like structural pruning for tree health as part of these projects, because we want to protect people, but also preserve the recently invested in infrastructure that we are including in the design. So so that will be part of the construction package.
And then
Great.
Walter, you have your hand up, but you also posed a question in the chat. Would there be any accessible power?
Oh, is that for like a like what is the request? No, we don't typically provide like power outlets in the field. In some situations, we can add an outlet to the light poles.
Yeah.
So that's
That,
something that we can consider.
yeah, Nelly, that's what I'm thinking. We have a number of events there where, we'll bring a generator or something like that, but it would be great if we could run like a cord off one of the lights
Okay.
to run power for when Mayor Wu comes to speak at our opening day parade
Yes.
and stuff like
exactly.
that.
Yep.
We can
So, thank
certainly
you.
I will certainly look at adding that into the package. That's should and I hesitate to say, of course, absolutely, because
Yeah,
there's
that's
all
okay.
sorts of things I don't know that could be problematic, but yes, that's something we can definitely look into. And
And then
thanks for
we have
flagging that.
And then we have Hugh. He's second to comment from Sophia about adding the dog fountain. Sarah said thank you for the trees. Karen, I think we're able to do a lot of the tree care assessment for the area only 2 years ago, so it might be okay at the moment. Happy to reconnect. And then I think that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we're also going to download the chat, and it becomes part of like the record of the meeting, and we review everything to make sure that we looked at all the comments and integrated what we could. So if we skipped over something, it's not lost. It's just that we didn't talk about it in this meeting. Yeah, so does that sort of answer everyone's questions for now? Maybe we could land on the QR code page just so that folks can, yeah, grab that on their phone. I also will email this survey out, and that makes me realize that maybe we should extend the window on the survey a little bit, because I might not send the email for a week. So anyways, we'll circle back on that. But please do fill out the survey, and we'll try to send that out soon. So with that, I think we will conclude the meeting. Of course, we're always taking additional feedback even after this meeting concludes. But thank you so much for your time tonight, and we really appreciate your input and all the conversations that we've had. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And if Shane and Adam and Michael want to hang out for just another minute, that would be fantastic.
Sounds good.
If you would like to pause the recording.
Oh, thank you very much for reminding me to do that recording.